Welcome back to A Bite from the Money Sandwich, where we provide practical and easy to understand tips and ideas on how to manage your money better, so as to let you retire with comfort and on your own terms. Being a financial advisor and being part of the financial services industry isn't just about getting the best and most appropriate policy for your client. What's also important is the relationship that you build, especially when your clients need you most, at claim time and being able to support them and their family in their time of need. Today I'm speaking to Amanda Cassar, the co-founder and sole director of Wealth Planning Partners. Amanda talks about how she started in this profession and what she loves most about being a financial advisor and helping her clients. Amanda also shares how she continues to help others outside of her business through, in part, her book and podcast, Financial Secrets Revealed, and her amazing charity work. Well, hello, Amanda. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you, Mark.
Well, thanks for coming on the show. And one of the things especially as a financial advisor and a very successful financial advisor, I should say, when did you first become interested in money?
Kind of a funny question. I'm possibly the least money motivated person you'll ever meet, but I was asked by a friend of my father's to start working as his secretary when I was about 18. So I was straight out of high school, still didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up, and thought, oh well, that's a job till I figure it out. So I started as a secretary for a life insurance advisor.
Okay.
And I suppose the rest is history. I woke up not long after that, and we weren't secretaries to lifeys anymore. We were personal assistants to financial advisors. And over time, I became the succession plan, and I eventually bought him out in 2014. But I think what triggered my interest in actually becoming an advisor for myself instead of doing the background stuff was I'd had my children, I'd been on mat leave, I'd come back to work, and I was on a very, very minimal wage as a secretary, and my husband was mowing lawns at the time. So we were struggling. We were living week to week, hand to mouth. And I'd saved a voucher I'd been given for Subway for lunch one day, and I was waiting for my next paycheck. We'd paid all our bills and had nothing left. And I went and ordered this sub, and at the end of it, the girl said, "But you have to buy a drink." And I'm like, "But I don't have any money." And this was before you could tap a card. So she kept the sub and wouldn't give me my lunch that day. And I sat in the food court just going, this is awful. And I don't ever want to be in this situation again. And I thought something has to change. My father was always one for keeping your life simple, don't overcomplicate things, it'll all be provided. And I just sort of went, that's BS, for want of a better word. If something's going to change, it's going to have to be me. So back then I thought, you know what, I could probably help people with a bit of insurance. I know how that's done. I've watched the advisor do it for years, long before we had to do 80-page documents to prove why we were doing what we did. So I thought if I became an advisor, I could probably do my studies and then help people and supplement our family income. So that was, I suppose, why I started on the journey to be an advisor. It was almost accidental, but it was that mindset shift in me that went, I have to be the change to make this work. So it was a big, I suppose at the time you don't think it's a moment. And when you look back and go, yeah, sitting there with no lunch in a food court.
That's powerful. And what I think is so important about that, apart from, as you said, that self-motivation to do something about it, is that the empathy you can absolutely feel for your clients who are saying, oh, I'm struggling. Yeah, well, let me tell you my story. I can absolutely get where you're coming from.
Yeah, I absolutely did. And, we had these two little kids and, we're struggling week to week. And I just went, I have to be the change. So, yeah, it was an awful situation to be in. But if that was rock bottom, then the only way was up. So.
And I suppose also you're saying about your kids and all that. And I do know just from personal experience, your care factor's off the roof. Women as a financial advisors are great with that empathy and care factor, which is so important in the relationship in this type of thing, especially in the insurance, which we'll touch on later.
Yeah, I think so. We don't just look at what are the dollars, what are the stats, have I got the deal for you?
Yeah.
Trust me, I'm a financial advisor. We do care about how it impacts not only the family, but a lot of people want to impact their community as well, or be able to give. So there's a much bigger picture to, I just want to supplement my income, or retire with $1 million. There's a much bigger picture to it than that.
And is that the part of your job that you really enjoy, the actual interaction, the relationship?
Yeah, it was funny after COVID, and I mean, look, Queensland was so lucky. We weren't locked down
Mm.
for that long. But the first time I had a client back in the office, I went, "Oh, that's right. I do like people. I remember why I did this now." So it was one of those. Yeah, yeah. It is about the people. It was a lovely moment to just get that back.
Yeah. Now, I know people were saying, technology, you can do everything over the internet, but that actual having someone feel like in your corner who's there to support you is really important, especially when it comes to your money.
Well, it's the accountability, isn't it? So I mean,
Mm.
we all know to lose weight, you move more and you eat less. But are
Mm.
you going to do that, or are you going to pay an advisor and have that, or a PT to have that accountability? Most people know it, but you don't do it. So it's the same sort of thing. We know what we should do. We should be putting more away. We should be saving. We should top up our super, and But if there's not someone to hold your hand or show you a better way or a different strategy, it's harder to make it happen. And look, there's things we don't know that we might be brilliant at what we choose to do, but how we manage our money isn't our thing. So I'm all for outsourcing what I don't know or can't do. So, and I think it should be the same with your money. Partner with someone who knows what they're doing to make it work
Mm.
better.
Yeah. I heard from a speaker, a totally different field, but he was saying how important coaches are and the accountability. And I just thought, yeah, it really is true. But he actually said an interesting thing. He just keeps remembering when he was a young gymnast. That's right. He was a gymnast. And he said, we always had sport coaches or teachers who were mentors. Why did we stop? Why do you, just because you get to adult life, why do you feel you still, we know, the business people have mentors, the top sports people still have coaches. Why don't we have that in our own life? And I just think that's exactly right. How do you need someone to help you stay accountable?
I remember, I think I heard when, Tiger Woods was at the top of his game, he had 3 separate coaches, one for his part, one for his long game, one for the strategy. So, if the number one in the world still thinks he needs 3 coaches, who would think any different? So, absolutely. And I think that the best thing about mentors and coaches is they may have some good ideas, but there's times when our intuition still overrides that. And you go, you know what, I really like that idea. I'm happy to take that one on board. But you know what, I don't think that one's for me. So we don't have to, even if we're a bit uncomfortable with it, we don't have to take it on board. But sometimes having that sounding board, you can go, you know what, that's exactly what I don't want to do. And it gives you that feedback where you go, okay, so I'm right to go on this path.
Yeah, that
Look, you could cock it
reassurance.
up. But, sometimes that intuition, we need to listen to that too.
Hmm. Uh, One of the things you mentioned before about that when you first started, was that you were working for a life insurance advisor, not a financial advisor. So, and I know you have a strong background in life insurance. That safety net of life insurance is important. And I know there's so many ads on, you can just do it over the internet again. Why do you see having that personal interaction when it comes to life insurance so important?
Because I think it's not just a product. It's the strategy that's involved as well. I mean, if I want to buy $1 million life insurance, yeah, I can get online and find a cheap quote
Mm.
and do that. I don't know whether the 9 questions I answered mean that I'm going to be paid out if I've got a pre-existing condition. I don't know if I should pay it out of my pocket or pay it annually out of my super fund. I don't know if I could get a tax deduction for it if I set it up a certain way, or if I just have to pay it and I can't claim a tax deduction. I mean, all these things as part of the strategy are very different to I just want to buy a product.
Mm.
So I think that makes a very big difference. It's not something that's just that simple. And I mean, total and permanent disability has different definitions. What will I be covered for with a trauma contract? I mean, these days, income protection contracts are so complicated. I have trouble understanding, all the different nuances in the new product
Mm.
compared to the old product. So, it's something that is definitely a specialised field, and I'd be very reluctant to go online and just buy a policy. without knowing the ins and outs and how I should do it, best for my situation.
And when you said strategy, that's important. But just as you started, how do you actually know $1 million is what you need?
Yeah,
That may be a good figure, but unless you actually have someone who can actually calculate this is actually what your family need for debts, for a replacement income, and all that sort of part, yeah, it's very important. And of course, it's nice having someone there if you ever need to claim.
absolutely. Yeah. Well, you're usually in a state of overwhelm, aren't you? The last thing you want to do is be on the phone for an hour and a half while you're sobbing, to, be put through to 14 different departments.
Yeah,
An advisor will do that for you.
yeah, no,
you know, and they're usually the only person turning up handing you money when everyone else has got their hand out. It's actually a really beautiful part of the job that you're the one who's helping out in the most practical way possible. You can't make them come back or take away the grief, but if you can take away the financial worries, how cool is that for a job?
yeah, that's pretty important. Um, One of the things, and I just sort of touching on that, if someone did pass away and the need for insurance, I definitely have a few clients, and you would too, that who are widows, and it just seems to be that unfortunately men don't look after themselves as well as women, and men do pop off this earth sooner than women in occasions. Helping women in their 50s and 60s, especially widowed or divorced, is something I know you'd take particular care about. Tell me more about that, if you wouldn't mind.
Well, unfortunately, women over 55 are the fastest growing area of homelessness in Australia at the
Really?
moment.
Okay.
So, women living in their cars with their children. Hubby's either passed and didn't have protection in place, or he's run off with the cliche secretary, leaving her destitute. There's shelters that can take in these women. There's often there's either domestic or financial violence that's been taken place. Some of these women have been emotionally abused for a very long time, told they're no good with money, no good with anything. So it's a very difficult place to come back from, and letting them know that they are still valuable. They do play an amazing role, and often that they've been told they're lousy for so long, especially financially, that eventually they believe it. And look, I tell you what, most of these women can make $100 on groceries, go further than anybody else I know. They're rock star budgeters, but
Incredible.
because they have no confidence, because they've believed the BS they've been fed for a long time, they need help to come back on that path. And look, sometimes an advisor is not the person they need. They might need a financial counsellor. So there's lots of different paths out there that can take. Some get a massive settlement and go, I don't know what to do with this because I'm useless with money. So there can be all sorts of different paths, but we're all part of a beautiful society that should be there to look after each other. There's children often involved as well, so the more we can help each other out, the better our communities and families thrive. So it's so important to help each other out.
And when you said they're hopeless for money, some of these, or many of these women have got successful careers, businesses. It's just the money department just traditionally hasn't been what they've looked after, and so they just don't know what they don't know. And a lot of times, it's just reassurance you're giving and helping women like in this situation with.
Well, we're also coming from a past where it wasn't traditionally the woman's role. I mean, you go back to, until the war came along, most women didn't have a job. They became secretaries until they found a husband, then their role was in the home. That's tradition. We don't live in that world anymore. We usually need double incomes just to survive. It's a fortunate family that's in a position where maybe hubby can be the breadwinner and the wife can stay at home. It's not a traditional role anymore, but those roles are so entrenched because they have been that way for so many generations that it's hard to overturn. And women in turn often delegate the role. The husband may say, I'll take care of the finances and you take care of this part. It may be the child rearing or whatever it is. And it's very normal in marriages where one is either better with money or takes on that role still.
Mm.
And these days it can be the wife, might be looking after, the tradie hubby's bookkeeping and all the rest of it. So I think when we completely delegate that role and go, fine, you deal with it, I've got all this other stuff to deal with it, we're opening ourselves up to a world of pain by not choosing to be involved. The advice I now give young people is to maintain your independence. Never, ever, ever let go of a personal bank account. I do believe couples still need to come together and have joint goals, and whether they pay those bills out of their own personal accounts or still have a joint account, that their choice of how they split the bills, whether it's 50-50, whether it's in proportion to their income, whether they set aside for holidays is all part of their budget. But that get out of jail free card, you should never give up that little bit of independence. It's just that, the backstop that I hope you never need.
Yeah, no, they're excellent points there. I think, especially for women, and if you've gone through a divorce, I do think we as you're speaking about community, we can do far more, just even to sort of say, well, okay, I've had the divorce, it's now been settled, what's next? And, the courses for them to do, people they can reach out to. And maybe, as you said, they don't need a financial advisor, they need a financial counsellor. But it seems a real disconnect between where the lawyer's role finishes and where the next step is. And I do see, I've always thought that there was an important role there that can be looked after.
Absolutely. And look, there are advisors who specialise completely in divorced women and what's next, and getting them through those, financial settlements and everything. So, there's definitely horses for courses in the profession, that's for sure.
And you wrote a book, Financial Secrets Revealed. Well done.
I did want to call it something else, like the best advice about money ever, but the compliance department didn't like that. So.
Fair enough.
So look, it's one of those things. I've always wanted to write a book, and whether it was a romance novel or a business book, didn't really mind. But obviously, what you do best sometimes comes out. So I thought, instead of just my take, and I didn't want to do just another how to do a budget or something like that. So I spoke to about 18 different people about their money stories.
Okay.
I spoke to people who were surviving on Centrelink, multi-million-dollar, business owners and financial advisors, and was asking questions like, what did your parents teach you about money? And the overwhelming answer was nothing. So it then brought up, other questions like, well, what are you teaching your kids about money? How did you get into the role you've got now? What's the best advice you've ever been given about money? If you had one tip, what would it be? So people from all walks of life sharing their own stories. You could ask everybody. It's a fascinating journey to go on.
Anyone those stories stand out?
I think there were two that were such complete opposites, where there was an entrepreneur over here in Australia who wanted her children to know that you never have to swap time for money, that, there's all these possibilities out there. And a financial advisor in the UK with a young son who said, if my son breaks the iPad, he needs to know that I need to work to be able to make the money to replace that item. So you can't just go to the bank in the wall, pull it out and replace it. There is a time factor involved in my life to be able to replace it. So it was these two incredibly opposite, both correct ideas. And look, Nellie, everybody came back with the old, I suppose the unspoken lessons, or the money didn't grow on trees, or it takes money to make money. I think the story that stood out most to me was a lady whose parents had a very strange concept on money and would tell her things when they drive past a beautiful home. They're bad people. You don't get ahead in life unless you're doing the wrong thing. They must be doing something. They must be drug money. So she grew up with this view that you had to be an ass to make a buck.
Right.
And she ended up being financially abused by one of her partners. So her story was a standout of, how not to parent.
Yeah.
The thing she still tells herself now, she has to stop herself and go, oh, that's the old thinking.
Yeah.
So, big changes.
I met a lady, Yishko, who the Commonwealth Bank, there's no ads here, but the Commonwealth Bank are doing a really good app for children, sort of replacing the old little elephant
Dolomites.
type thing, Dolomite, and with this app. But what I really like is that they were had a big enough budget that they can employ behavioural scientists to actually bring up stories to how to adults to teach their kids about money. Because exactly what you just said.
None of us have been taught.
None of us have been taught, and it's not that actually parents don't want to teach their kids, they just don't know what to say. And so this provides all that information. And I just think that's a great start, rather than just saying, yep, start saving. Here's the why you do that. And I just think that's so important.
I mean, you don't need to sit your 4-year-old down with the family budget and go, right, there's no new sneakers for you this week. We've got the electricity bill coming in. It has to be appropriate. So that sounds fantastic.
Yeah. So with the book, what's the sort of feedback? Has it made you feel like, oh, I want to do another one, or that was so exhausting that no, that's it?
No, look, if I could have any other career, I'd be a writer. So I think I'd need a castle in the south of France with fabulous wine and cheese. So just sit and write for the rest of my life. Actually, the book became a podcast. So the Financial Secrets Revealed podcast came on. So season 1 was to interview everyone from the book. And season 2 was all about shining the light on financial abuse because of that case that I came across. So interviewing other victims and people who support victims on how to become a survivor of financial abuse. So, yeah, it's spurred a whole series. And look, will there probably be a book on financial abuse at some stage? Yes, but that in turn has also inspired a course I've written for financial professionals around the world to become experts on financial abuse so they can in turn assist people. So the snowball effect from starting the book has taken on it's certainly gotten a whole lot bigger than I ever thought it would.
And, I really do wish you the best of luck with that, especially with that course, because a lot of financial advisors or financial coaches, counselors do have these situations and they're just not quite sure how to handle it. So if there's something there that they can learn, they can do a course, that's brilliant. So well done.
Thank you.
Now, you're actually also just to touch on from the financial abuse and wanting to help others. You're actually involved in a few charities. I noticed when looking at your website. I didn't actually know that about you. So, what are they? Anything? Those 2 charities for any particular reason, or is there something that got you onto those?
Yeah. So when I first set out in business, I was looking for other women in business to network with, and did a bit of Googling and found the largest group in Australia called Business Chicks, who the lovely Emma Isaacs heads up. You may have heard of Business Chicks. They're a fabulous tribe, and they partner with a group called the Hunger Project. And for many years, I'd watch these women go off, to Africa, and they'd raise all this money, and I just thought they were so incredible and what an amazing thing they were doing. And Emma collared me one day when they launched on the Gold Coast and went, well, why don't you go? And I'm like, that's what other people do. My version of charity is, cleaning out my wardrobe every couple of years or a few dollars in the Lifesaver tin. I just had no idea about philanthropy. So it was basically, I went home and had a really good think about it, and everything I had was an excuse. I've got a business, I've got children, I couldn't be away from home for this long. And if you want something enough, you end up making it happen. And I guess I threw caution to the wind, figured out how to raise $10,000 for the Hunger Project, plus pay my own way to Darkest Africa, and basically had the time of my life. We were learning leadership lessons from the poorest people on earth. There's financial abuse that goes on when you make $1 a day. Your husband sells the contents of the home and runs away. And it just, I suppose, puts that brand new perspective. Like, if these people can turn their lives around with mindset shift and the right coaching, then what's holding me back? So it was so wonderful. I signed up again to do it the next year, and went to Malawi the year after I'd been to Uganda, and in 2019 went to India as well. So I've had to do that fundraising exercise 3 times, which is absolutely no fun, but you're thinking the bigger picture. It's for a wonderful cause. So that's become a beautiful part of my life and story, that I got involved with that. Hands Across the Water, I believe I heard Peter Baines speak at a conference many years ago about his story of how he'd been with the Australian Police and designated to go and help with the body repatriation after the tsunami in Thailand. And there were, I think, 32 children living under a tarp whose parents had all died. And he got together with one of the girls from the UK and said, look, maybe we should build them a house. Maybe we should do a bit of fundraising and see if we can just pop a little, place together for them. And, now he's on the world stage speaking about this. There's orphanages all over Thailand. And I did, have the privilege of winning a trip to the Bangkok slums with Peter and helping out over there as well. So that I think it gives you such a beautiful perspective on life. And you do realise how bloody lucky we are to be in this country with the safety net of Centrelink. As much as we whinge and bitch and moan that it's never enough, boy, it's a lot more than a lot of other people that have to rely on the charity and goodwill of others.
And you really have seen from Africa, India to Asia. You've diversified there. It's amazing some of the. But I suppose one of the things, because I have spoken to you a bit, you find this incredible positivity, don't you?
Well, every time you're sort of sitting there in the mopes. I mean, I had issues today about, the software didn't work and my quote cocked up. And, you think about the lady who's breaking rocks for 8 to 10 hours a day and can't afford pencils for her kids to go to school. And you're like, you know what? First world problem in the most real sense of the word. Yeah. So it just gives you that brick up the side of the head of perspective to be able to deal with, things that can be a lot harder for other people who haven't seen that. I think that resilience, you've watched it firsthand.
Yeah, and that resilience is incredible. They just keep going. They just keep and what Peter does, Peter Baines, and that work is just amazing. That's just so no, well done. I just that's you're raising a family. You had a young family. Raising out money. You still had your own business because you went and bought succeeded your boss, and so it was your business. It's not as if you had a lot of people there to support you, and you just did it. So no, really well done.
It's one of those things, Mark, that I think, like anything, the more you put in, the more you get out of it. And I'd have to say I'm so much richer for doing it that the privilege has been completely mine, which is how big a gift is that?
That's amazing. We're coming to, and I think because there's other things that you definitely specialise in, especially the aged care and other areas. So I'm definitely going to ask you back. But so I don't want to keep you too long this time. But always, especially if I have a financial advisor on, some of the sort of the money tips that you used to see that, or money mistakes that people have that just pretty simple to fix. What some of the things you see that could be easily, something that you could fix, or a tip that you could suggest?
I think when it comes to being on the right track, it's the really boring stuff that actually works. So my top tip has to be live within your means. And as boring as that sounds, most people don't even own a budget, or it's too hard to do one. And one of the biggest pushbacks I get is, oh, but I don't know what I'm making every week. I actually don't care what you make every week. I care what goes out. So to sit down, jump on the Money Smart website, or, wherever you can. There's budgets all over the internet, and just work out, what does it cost you to wake up and breathe every day, or whatever your pay period is. If it's weekly, fortnightly, do it to that. If it costs you $967.29 to breathe, and that means pay all your bills, if you want to put a holiday in there, do it. Or what does it just cost you to get up? When you know that figure, and it will change all the time, you can work out, is your income enough to cover that? Does it mean there's cream for anything else? Does it mean you can start putting away for investments or retirement? Instead of just going, oh, I think I've got an extra $50, I might do this. You don't really know. So that very boring, knowing what it costs you to breathe, gives you then opportunities. Because if you don't make that, you have to figure out either the expenses have to come back, or you need to earn more, preferably both. So you can then make smart choices because you know what it costs you to live. So it's very boring and very basic, but is probably the biggest building block of being able to take charge of your wealth that I could possibly share.
Yeah, and if you don't save, you can't do anything. So you do need the ability. That's excellent, because there are stats out there that more than a third of the Australian workforce are actually spending more than they earn, and that you're just going up backwards.
Yeah. I deserve that trip to Bali every year. I work really hard, but if you're not even covering your expenses, you don't. And they refinance the house every few years because there's a bit more equity, and the home loan's constantly going up. It's an awful cycle to be caught in, and one you can break.
Yeah. And I think you did say it earlier that about giving yourself back time. And I think one of the things that we talk about how financial advisors or financial coaches can help you if you're outsourcing the finances or the money side of it to someone else to take a lot of that off your plate. It does give you back time. And a lot of people, when you do speak to them and they're in this exact situation, I don't know how much I've got money. I don't know where my money's going or what I'm spending it on. It's because you don't have time to look at it in a lot of cases.
Yeah. Well, you don't make the time.
Don't make the time. Yes.
Yeah. You've probably got the time. You can stop playing Angry Birds or watching telly for an hour a night.
Oh, okay.
Back it.
There's mum. Yep. Hard love, Amanda. Yes. Okay. I agree with that. Yes. Okay. The final question I always ask is, what's the best piece of advice? And you've actually given some really good ones, but what's the best piece of advice you've received?
Probably to invest in yourself. I'm an absolute massive fan of lifelong learning. I think I'd probably shrivel up if I didn't continue to learn. And I do invest heavily in my own education. The leadership programs that I did with the Hunger Project and Hands Across the Water were food for the soul. I'm not sure how else to put it. I invest in Strategic Coach and go overseas for coaching sessions every quarter. I'm a happy member of MDRT and invest in going to their annual meetings every year to learn from, financial advisors all around the world who are happy to share their tips on how they look after their clients. I'm an avid reader. I cannot go to bed at night without reading. So I think investing in yourself is probably the wisest investment you can make to continue to learn and grow and, just want to become a better person.
Cannot agree more. That's a wonderful spot to finish on. Amanda, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Mark. Really enjoyed being here.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you'd like to know more about Amanda, visit wealthplanningpartners.com.au or feel free to email me on admin@themoneysandwich.com or visit our website, themoneysandwich.com, if you have any questions or would like to know more. Enjoyed this episode and want to hear more of A Bite from the Money Sandwich? Make sure you subscribe on your platform of choice so you can automatically receive each episode as soon as it's released. As with every podcast, this information is not advice, as not personalised to your own situation. And past performance is never guaranteed for the future. What we are trying to do here is to provide tips, coaching and education to help improve your money knowledge, which we believe can only be a good thing. See you next time when we take another bite from the Money Sandwich.